Situated at the far northeastern edge of Canada, the island of Newfoundland, approximately 110,000 square kilometers, and Labrador, approximately 295,000 square kilometers, today form a province rich in natural resources but with low population density. Both landmasses were covered by the Laurentide Ice Sheet during the Last Glacial Maximum, around 18,000 years before present, YBP. After the glacier retreated, ice patches remained on Newfoundland until approximately 9,000 calibrated years before present, Cal YBP. Indigenous peoples, whose ancestors had migrated roughly 5,000 kilometers from the west coast of North America, arrived in Labrador around 10,000 calories YBP and in Newfoundland around 6,000 calories YBP. Archaeological evidence suggests at least 3 distinct settlement episodes, represented by different cultural groups, the Maritime Archaic, Palaeoeskimo, and Beothuk. Newfoundland has remained home to indigenous populations until the present, with only one apparent hiatus between 3,400 and 2,800 YBP. This pattern indicates periods of abandonment, severe population contraction, or local extinction, followed by subsequent immigration from one or more source populations. However, the specific dynamics and cultural or biological relationships among these successive populations have remained unclear. By analyzing mitochondrial genome diversity and isotopic ratios from 74 ancient human remains alongside the archaeological record, this study provides definitive evidence of a genetic discontinuity between the maternal lineages of these populations. The northeastern margin of North America appears to have been populated multiple times by distinct groups, which did not share a recent common ancestry, but rather a much deeper ancestral connection at the time of continental entry. The island of Newfoundland stretches like a forgotten jewel at the northeastern edge of North America, its rocky coastline battered by the relentless Atlantic waves. Forests of spruce, pine, and birch spread inland, their shadows cast over rivers that twist through valleys like silver ribbons. Mist clings to the cliffs in the early morning, softening the jagged rocks, while the distant cry of seabirds echoes across the bays. It is here, amidst this rugged wilderness, that the Beothuk, the Red People, made their home, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of rivers, forests, and sea. Every hill, every inlet, every hidden cove bore witness to their presence, yet centuries later, only traces of their world remain. To understand the Beothuk, one must first understand the land they inhabited. During the last glacial maximum, approximately 18,000 years ago, Newfoundland and Labrador were buried beneath the colossal Laurentide Ice Sheet. The ice carved deep valleys and reshaped the coastline, leaving behind lakes, rivers, and fertile plains once it retreated around 9,000 years ago. Into this post-glacial environment came humans, ancestors of the Beothuk, who migrated thousands of kilometers from the western edges of the continent. Archaeological evidence shows at least 3 waves of settlement. First, the Maritime Archaic peoples, who arrived around 6,000 years ago. Next, Palaeoeskimo groups, skilled hunters and fishers from the Arctic, and finally, the Beothuk, whose ancestors established themselves as a distinct cultural and genetic population by the first millennium CE. Modern mitochondrial DNA studies reveal that the Beothuk shared no recent maternal ancestry with earlier groups, confirming their unique lineage and deep historical separation. Newfoundland, while vast, presented unique ecological challenges. Its terrestrial ecosystem was limited. Caribou and beaver were the primary prey species, while wolves, bears, lynx, marten, and foxes prowled as predators. The Arctic hare, though present in oral traditions, has not been definitively confirmed archaeologically. In contrast, the surrounding waters teemed with life. Atlantic salmon swam in the rivers, cod, flounder, smelt, and capelin filled the bays, mussels and soft-shell clams dotted the shores, and seals and walruses were once abundant along the coast. The island's birds, from ducks and geese to the now extinct great auk and murres, supplemented the Beothuk diet, providing protein and other resources. Every aspect of their subsistence required intricate knowledge of these species' life cycles, migratory patterns, and seasonal behavior. The Beothuk developed an intimate, almost symbiotic relationship with their environment. In winter, when snow covered the forests, they moved closer to rivers or sheltered valleys, relying on stored food, trapped animals, and fishing beneath the ice. In spring and autumn, they followed caribou herds, gathered eggs from seabird colonies, and harvested shellfish along the coast. Summer was spent in abundant coastal zones, where salmon ran in the rivers and seals basked on rocks. The seasonal mobility of the Beothuk was not random. It reflected centuries of observation, experimentation, and adaptation, passed down orally and through practice from one generation to the next. Central to their identity was the use of red ochre. This vibrant pigment, derived from iron-rich minerals, was rubbed on the skin, painted on clothing, and applied to tools, canoes, and even the walls of shelters. Red was more than decorative, it marked membership, status, and readiness for ritual or hunting. Some archaeologists suggest the patterns might have conveyed messages, clan territories, seasonal routes, or secret storage locations. Red ochre was the visual language of the Beothuk, a symbol of presence, communication, and cultural continuity. Their settlements were modest yet deliberate. Semi-nomadic groups constructed small, domed shelters from wood, bark, and animal hides. Camp locations were chosen carefully. Near rivers for fish, near forests for game and building materials, but also hidden from outsiders. Archaeological excavations have revealed fire pits, hearths, and storage pits, showing careful planning and resource management. Families formed the core of social units, but bands maintained communication across the landscape, sharing hunting strategies, knowledge of the terrain, and cultural rituals. Life was organized, yet flexible. Men hunted caribou, fished, and crafted tools. Women processed hides, prepared food, and taught children survival skills. Knowledge transfer was hands-on, children learned to identify edible plants, track animals, construct shelters, and use red ochre in culturally meaningful ways. Stories, songs, and rituals connected the living to ancestors, to the land, and to the spiritual world, embedding survival strategies within narrative and memory. The Beothuk were also cautious. Evidence suggests they deliberately avoided contact with neighboring indigenous groups and, later, European settlers. Oral traditions and archaeological finds hint at secret inland camps, hidden fishing stations, and trails known only to insiders. This strategy of avoidance was a form of survival, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of risk and environmental opportunity. Their world was one of balance. Between humans and nature, between openness and secrecy, between survival and cultural expression. Artifacts left behind offer tantalizing clues to their ingenuity and creativity. Stone tools, bone implements, carved canoes, and painted hides reveal practical skill intertwined with artistry. Patterns in red ochre hint at symbolic meaning, encoding identity, movement, and social structure. Archaeologists continue to debate the purpose of these designs, but they testify to a society capable of abstract thought, complex planning, and aesthetic expression, all under the pressures of an isolated and challenging environment. By the time the European presence began to be felt on Newfoundland's coasts, the Beothuk had already established a centuries-long tradition of adaptation, survival, and cultural resilience. Their story at this point is not one of tragedy but of mastery. A people in harmony with their surroundings, leaving subtle yet profound traces of a civilization carefully woven into every river bend, forested hill, and coastal inlet. They were more than survivors, they were stewards of the land, skilled navigators of its dangers and its gifts, and artists whose canvas was the world itself. As the sun dips behind the forested cliffs and the last light glances off red ochre streaks on ancient stones, the viewer is left with the sense of a world alive, intimate, and meticulously ordered. Newfoundland is more than a backdrop, it is an active participant in the Beothuk story. Its rivers, forests, and shores shaped the people who walked them, and in turn, those people left traces that whisper across centuries. This is the foundation. The stage upon which the saga of the Red People begins, a civilization whose harmony with the land set the course for a story of survival, secrecy, and identity that will unfold across the following chapters. Morning breaks over Newfoundland's forests in a quiet, golden haze. The rivers glisten like molten silver, carrying the faint reflection of red ochre streaks left by the red people. Smoke curls from hidden hearths as families awaken, their movements deliberate, practiced, the rhythm of survival woven into every gesture. Here, in the heart of dense forests and along rocky coasts, the Beothuk begin another day. A day governed by seasons, the movements of animals, and the unseen presence of neighbors and intruders alike. Children stir in their hides and bark shelters, listening to the songs of birds signaling the dawn. Elders rise first, tending to fire pits, sharpening tools, and checking traps set overnight for caribou or beaver. The Beothuk were hunters and gatherers par excellence, skilled in reading tracks in snow or mud, understanding the habits of animals, and predicting tides and river currents. Every action was informed by knowledge passed down through generations. Survival was not instinct alone but wisdom embedded in observation, memory, and storytelling. Men prepare for the hunt. They carry stone-tipped spears, bone knives, and intricately carved harpoons, tools honed over centuries. Canoes, crafted from birch bark and bound with spruce roots, are pushed silently into the water. The river becomes a corridor, connecting inland hunting grounds with coastal fishing sites. Here, salmon swarm upstream, and seals haul out on distant rocks. Hunting and fishing are not merely for sustenance, they are exercises in patience, timing, and the intimate understanding of ecosystems. Even the smallest fish or shellfish is gathered with respect, every resource honored. Meanwhile, women move with precision through domestic tasks. They prepare food, tanning hides with ochre and fat to preserve them, weaving nets and garments, and teaching children the skills they will need to thrive. The division of labor is fluid yet organized, everyone contributes to the survival and continuity of the group. Education is hands-on, children learn to track, to fish, to construct shelters, and to identify plants that are edible, medicinal, or sacred. Storytelling weaves all this knowledge together, myths, rituals, and histories encode practical lessons, blending survival with spirituality. Rituals punctuate daily life. Red ochre, smeared on skin, clothing, and tools, marks identity, status, and readiness for hunting or ceremony. Certain patterns are believed to provide protection, invoke ancestral spirits, or signal clan affiliations. Archaeological evidence suggests that some ochre markings were not random. They followed complex designs, possibly conveying messages about territory, seasonal movements, or secret resources. This careful symbolism turns the forest, rivers, and shoreline into a living map of Beothuk knowledge. Social cohesion is vital. Families cluster into bands, maintaining contact across distances with signals, small gifts, or arranged meetings at seasonal camps. Communication relies on familiarity with the landscape, and knowledge of hidden trails and inlets allows groups to move with both freedom and discretion. The Beothuk appear to have avoided confrontation wherever possible, even with neighboring indigenous groups, creating a culture of quiet vigilance and strategic retreat. Survival is as much about managing risk as it is about securing food. The Beothuk diet is diverse and meticulously planned. Caribou and beaver provide meat and materials. Salmon and seals supplement nutrition, seabird eggs and shellfish fill gaps, berries, roots, and edible plants are gathered seasonally. Each resource requires specialized skills to acquire and preserve. Preservation methods, such as drying, smoking, or storing in pits lined with moss, ensure food lasts through harsh winters. Even the location of camps reflects careful planning, access to multiple food sources, protection from predators, and concealment from outsiders are all considered. Art and craft flourish alongside survival. Canoes are decorated with ochre streaks, tools are engraved, hides painted, and baskets woven with intricate patterns. These items are functional yet expressive, reflecting both skill and identity. Art is embedded in life, it marks ceremonies, communicates knowledge, and strengthens community bonds. Every line of ochre, every carving, every carefully constructed tool embodies the Red people's connection to both the physical and spiritual world. Even in everyday life, the Beothuk demonstrate ingenuity. Traps, weirs, and fishing nets show sophisticated engineering, portable shelters adapt to seasonal movements, and hidden caches store both food and tools for emergencies. Their adaptability is evident in the way they use the environment: birch bark for waterproofing, moss and grass for insulation, stones to weigh nets or create hearths, a seamless blend of necessity, observation, and creativity. But the forest is not empty of threat. European settlers begin to appear along the coasts, bringing competition for resources, disease, and disruption. Although initial contact may have been sparse, the Beothuk respond cautiously, withdrawing inland, relocating camps, and altering routes. This strategic avoidance, a hallmark of their survival, illustrates their awareness of an expanding world beyond their forests and rivers. Even in apparent isolation, their movements, decisions, and cultural practices are shaped by the presence of others. By the end of the day, as the sun dips low over the horizon, the forest glows with the warmth of firelight. The smell of smoked fish and cooked meat rises from hidden campsites, mingling with the resinous scent of pine. Children practice tracking, weaving, and storytelling, elders recount legends, and families gather to share meals and knowledge. Red ochre glimmers faintly in the fading light, a constant reminder of identity, connection, and continuity. The chapter closes with a view of the island's rivers and forests bathed in twilight. The Beothuk are invisible yet omnipresent, their lives unfolding in a delicate balance with the land. Every river bend, every hidden cove, every streak of ochre tells a story of ingenuity, resilience, and adaptation. Their mastery of survival and culture sets the stage for the coming challenges. Encounters with Europeans, resource pressures, and the slow unraveling of a civilization that will one day vanish from sight but leave echoes in every red-streaked stone, artifact, and memory. The mist clings to the Newfoundland coast, curling around jagged cliffs and rocky inlets as the first light of dawn spreads across the land. In these remote forests and along the riverbanks, the Beothuk live largely hidden, their presence woven into the rhythms of rivers, the calls of birds, and the migration of caribou. Yet, the island's isolation is beginning to fracture. European fishermen, explorers, and traders are making their way to the same shores, drawn by the abundance of cod, seals, and other resources. The Beothuk observe silently. From concealed vantage points along high riverbanks or dense forest edges, they watch strangers in boats. Canoes paddle cautiously among European vessels, careful not to be seen. The Red people are skilled in stealth and concealment, and their knowledge of every rock, inlet, and forest trail gives them an almost supernatural ability to remain unseen. This is a world where every movement carries meaning, where silence is as powerful as speech. Early encounters are deceptively simple. Fishermen trade small items for furs or information. Sometimes the Europeans leave gifts, hoping to encourage cooperation. The Beothuk accept only what is necessary, wary of revealing their full knowledge of rivers, hunting grounds, or hidden caches. These interactions are fleeting, measured, and fraught with tension. Every gesture, every glance, becomes a negotiation, not of words, but of survival and territory. The European presence introduces new pressures. Nets now float in the waters where salmon were once abundant, shoreline camps compete with the Beothuk's temporary shelters. Diseases, invisible yet deadly, begin to infiltrate the population. Smallpox, influenza, and measles arrive silently, carried unknowingly by European visitors. Unlike warfare, these pathogens act as an invisible predator, reducing numbers and spreading fear. The Beothuk respond cautiously, retreating further inland, altering routes, and intensifying secrecy. Ritual and red ochre become tools of defense. Markings on hides, canoes, and tools are not only expressions of identity but also subtle messages to outsiders, a warning, a boundary, a claim to territory. Archaeological evidence suggests patterns in these ochre markings may have served as maps, indicating safe paths, seasonal hunting zones, and hidden caches. In these symbols, the Beothuk embed their knowledge of the land, preserving secrets even in the face of growing European intrusion. Communication among bands becomes even more critical. Elders instruct younger members on strategies for evading strangers, which paths are safe, which river bends offer cover, which islands can serve as temporary refuges. Children learn to read the environment with heightened acuity, noticing subtle changes in wind, water, or animal behavior that signal the approach of intruders. This is survival as much as culture, a delicate balance between engagement and avoidance. Yet tension escalates. Occasional violent encounters leave marks on both sides. Beothuk retaliations are swift and calculated, targeting only those who threaten camps or take resources. European accounts describe raids and thefts, often misunderstanding the motives behind them, labeling the Beothuk as hostile, without grasping the logic of survival in a land that is both abundant and unforgiving. Canoes glide silently under moonlight, carrying families to temporary inland camps. Fires are small, hidden, and carefully tended. The smell of smoked meat drifts faintly, leaving minimal trace. These nocturnal movements reveal the Red People's adaptability. They know when to remain, when to flee, and how to leave no evidence of presence. The island becomes a chessboard, each move informed by generations of intimate ecological knowledge. Trade and conflict intertwine. European settlers seek furs, fresh water, or guidance through forests. The Beothuk offer only what is necessary, withholding secrets that could compromise safety. Even small gifts exchanged are observed closely. A knife left on a rock may signal a path, but the Beothuk know its value lies not in the metal, but in the trust and observation of those who accept it. Every interaction is a negotiation of power, perception, and survival. Meanwhile, life within the Beothuk community continues. Ceremonies are held in hidden clearings. Children learn tracking, fishing, and storytelling. Elders maintain oral histories, passing down warnings and lessons from past encounters. Red ochre continues to mark not only identity but resilience, a visual reminder that the people remain present, even if largely unseen. By the chapter's close, the landscape is a tapestry of survival, strategy, and subtle resistance. European maps and settlements slowly encroach, but the Red People are never fully mapped. Their knowledge, their rituals, and their ability to vanish into forests and rivers preserve a cultural autonomy that no European presence can entirely erase. Every river bend, every hidden cove, every streak of red in the forest carries a memory, a testament to a people navigating a world suddenly larger and more dangerous than they had ever known. The forest floor glimmers faintly under the early morning sun, streaks of crimson reflecting off damp leaves and river stones. The Beothuk move silently among the trees, their bodies, tools, and shelters coated in red ochre. This pigment, vibrant and enduring, is more than decoration. It is identity, protection, and communication, a language written across skin, hide, and landscape. Families gather near the riverbanks, grinding red ochre into fine powder. The elders guide the young, teaching not only how to prepare it but how to apply it with precision. Patterns are formed, stripes along arms, dots on the chest, intricate symbols on canoes and hides, each with meaning known only to the community. Some patterns mark seasonal territories, others signal clan affiliations, and some hint at hidden caches of tools or food. In a subtle yet profound way, the red becomes a map, a code, and a shield. Beyond its practical applications, red ochre is sacred. Ceremonial gatherings occur in secluded clearings where the forest itself seems to listen. Fires are lit with small, contained flames, casting dancing shadows that mingle with the red-streaked bodies of the participants. Songs and chants tell stories of ancestors, hunts, and the rhythms of the land. Children sit quietly, learning the lore of rivers, the calls of birds, and the migration patterns of caribou. Lessons embedded in ritual and pigment alike. The preparation of ochre itself is a meticulous process. Rocks are ground, sifted, and mixed with animal fat to create a lasting paste. Canoes are rubbed along seams to prevent leaks, tools are coated to signal ownership, and hides are marked to ensure recognition in distant hunting grounds. Each action is purposeful, connecting the spiritual, social, and survival aspects of life. The red is everywhere. In footprints along the sand, in smoke-stained caves, on the tips of arrows, a silent statement of presence, history, and memory. Archaeologists centuries later uncover fragments of these markings, struggling to decode the layers of meaning. A line of red across a canoe might indicate a safe river route, a series of dots on a hide could mark a hunting ground. Some scholars propose that the Beothuk used red ochre to preserve knowledge in times of danger, leaving hints that only their community could understand. It is a culture of secrets, safeguarded through symbolism and shared memory, allowing the people to thrive in isolation despite growing European intrusion. Red ochre also plays a protective role. Coating the body was believed to shield against spirits and predators, physical and spiritual alike. A layer of red might confuse enemies, marking boundaries the Beothuk preferred to keep inviolate. Canoes carrying families at dusk, their sides gleaming with pigment, move like shadows on the water, difficult to detect. Even the land itself, painted in streaks of red on rocks and trees, serves as a warning to outsiders. This is territory marked by knowledge, ritual, and vigilance. In these forests and rivers, every use of ochre reinforces a culture resilient to change. While Europeans measure land with compass and chart, the Beothuk measure it in stories, symbols, and sacred pigment. Their maps are living, fluid, and intertwined with the cycles of nature, an intimate understanding passed through ritual, observation, and coded markings that speak across generations. By late afternoon, small groups move silently to hidden caches, retrieving tools or food stored for the lean months. The red markings guide them, ensuring no one strays too far or risks exposure. Even in absence, the pigment conveys instructions, warnings, and stories, a practical and spiritual safeguard that underscores the ingenuity of a people in harmony with their land. As the sun dips behind the hills, fires in secret clearings glow faintly, illuminating the red-streaked figures gathered for evening ceremonies. The rhythm of drums, the chant of voices, and the shimmer of ochre reflect a culture alive, vibrant, and deeply connected to both land and ancestors. This is the world the Europeans glimpsed only partially, unable to decode the layers of meaning hidden in color, ritual, and subtlety. By the chapter's end, the audience sees that red ochre is more than pigment, it is identity, secrecy, survival, and spirituality all at once. It protects, teaches, and communicates, leaving traces of the Beothuk that will persist long after the people themselves vanish from sight. The forest, rivers, and cliffs are inscribed with a living legacy, waiting for those who can read the language of red to understand the depth of a culture that mastered both art and survival. Morning mist clings to the forests of Newfoundland, curling around pine trunks and weaving through the valleys carved by rivers that have flowed here for millennia. In this quiet, secluded world, the Beothuk move like shadows, their red ochre-streaked bodies blending with the rising sun and the coppery soil. Life here is a delicate dance with nature, a balance of survival, ritual, and deep respect for the land. Families awaken in small, hidden campsites tucked along riverbanks and forest clearings. Smoke rises gently from carefully maintained fires, carrying the scent of cooking fish and roasted caribou. Children stretch, yawning as elders begin their day, preparing tools, repairing canoes, and checking caches of dried food. Every action is deliberate, honed by centuries of living in an environment that is both bountiful and unforgiving. The Beothuk were expert hunters, fishermen, and foragers. Caribou herds were tracked with intimate knowledge of their seasonal patterns, while rivers teemed with salmon and cod. The forest offered small mammals, birds, and edible plants, but each resource was used with restraint. Elders taught younger members to read the signs of the land, the bend of a river, the call of a bird, the tracks of an unseen predator. Every footstep, every whispered instruction was a lesson in survival, passed down through observation and practice rather than written words. At the same time, the Beothuk wove ritual into daily life. Before a hunt, prayers and offerings were made to honor the spirit of the animals they sought, ensuring respect and balance. Canoes were painted with red ochre, not only for identity and status but also as spiritual protection during travel. Tools were blessed with chants, and campfires were tended with care, each spark a tiny beacon against misfortune. Life was never merely functional, every action carried meaning, connecting the people to their ancestors and the rhythms of the natural world. Yet amidst this order and resilience, there existed an element of mystery. Some individuals vanished into the wilderness for days, even weeks, leaving behind little trace. These disappearances were never purely accidental. Archaeological evidence and oral history suggest that certain members of the Beothuk knew hidden trails, secret hunting grounds, and concealed shelters inaccessible to outsiders. Their knowledge allowed them to move through the forests invisibly, avoiding conflict with neighboring groups and later, European settlers. These shadows, moving unseen, were a testament to a culture built on subtlety, secrecy, and survival. Evenings brought storytelling, music, and social cohesion. Around the fire, elders recounted tales of ancestors, migrations, and the spirits of rivers and forests. Songs echoed across valleys, their melodies carrying warnings, history, and instruction. Children absorbed lessons through rhythm, repetition, and observation, internalizing knowledge that could not be written down. Every story, every song, every whispered legend reinforced identity and community, strengthening bonds that allowed the Beothuk to endure in a landscape filled with predators and challenges. Archaeological sites hint at the sophistication of these hidden strategies. Carefully placed caches of food, layered shelters within forests, and inconspicuous markings in ochre suggest an advanced understanding of logistics, risk management, and long-term survival. These tactics were not static. They adapted to changing seasons, prey availability, and the increasing presence of outsiders. The Beothuk were not passive victims of circumstance but skilled navigators of a complex, often hostile environment. By night, the forest transformed. Shadows deepened, and the cries of nocturnal animals filled the air. Canoes glided silently along rivers, their occupants indistinguishable from the dark waters, red ochre barely visible but symbolically powerful. These movements were not random but purposeful, often to relocate, scout, or retrieve hidden supplies. The land itself became a living map, with rivers, ridges, and clearings forming a network understood intimately by those who lived within it. Even as the European presence began to encroach, the Beothuk's survival strategies, their secrecy, mobility, and understanding of the land, allowed them to persist. They remained largely invisible, shadows among trees, echoes along rivers, leaving outsiders to guess at the richness and complexity of their lives. The forest was both a home and a shield, and the red ochre a signature of knowledge, presence, and resilience. As the night deepens, firelight flickers on red-streaked faces, reflecting determination, wisdom, and a profound connection to the world around them. The Beothuk may have been hidden, moving silently through the forests, but their culture was vibrant, adaptive, and deeply rooted in the rhythms of the land. Every footprint, every painted hide, every carefully stored cache is a testament to a people who survived for generations through ingenuity, ritual, and secrecy. By the chapter's conclusion, the audience sees that the Beothuk were masters of subtle survival, blending practical skill with spiritual depth, leaving hints of their presence in every river bend, forest clearing, and red streak of ochre. Their shadows stretch across time, a reminder that life in harmony with nature requires intelligence, discipline, and a profound understanding of the land, lessons that remain as compelling today as they were centuries ago. The winds over Newfoundland grow colder, carrying the scent of the sea and the distant clang of European ships. Once abundant rivers now bear signs of dwindling fish stocks, forests that seemed endless show scars of overhunting and territorial encroachment. The Beothuk, whose survival had relied on careful balance with the land, face a world increasingly hostile and unpredictable. Winter approaches, and with it, the challenges of feeding a community hidden in isolation. Caribou herds, once plentiful, have shifted their migration patterns in response to climate and hunting pressures. Rivers that supported salmon runs now see smaller numbers, and marine mammals, seals, walruses, are hunted more aggressively by newcomers. The Beothuk adjust as they always have, rationing food, moving camps, and seeking hidden resources. But subtle shifts in their environment begin to accumulate into profound stress. It is not just the land that tests them. European contact, initially distant and sporadic, becomes more intrusive. The introduction of new diseases, smallpox, influenza, tuberculosis, strikes with lethal force. Without immunity, entire family groups fall ill, leaving children orphaned and elders weakened. Archaeological and historical records show that outbreaks were often sudden, devastating populations that had thrived for centuries. The red ochre-streaked people who had once moved like shadows through the forest now begin to vanish in ways no one can predict. Famine follows disease. Isolated from traditional hunting grounds and increasingly cut off from coastal fishing areas, the Beothuk are forced into more marginal territories. Seasonal caches, carefully maintained for generations, are sometimes raided or inaccessible. The combination of disease, scarce resources, and displacement creates hardship that threatens not only survival but the very structure of their society. And yet, the greatest threat may not have been nature alone. European expansion brings subtle forms of treachery. Settlers and fishermen, claiming rivers and shores, unknowingly or deliberately sever access to critical resources. Archaeological and historical evidence hints at intentional isolation. Settlements near rivers and bays are claimed, fences or obstructions prevent hunting, and peaceful contact is met with suspicion or hostility. Over time, the Beothuk are squeezed into smaller, less productive territories. Survival now requires not only skill and secrecy but constant vigilance against human intrusion. Some families respond by retreating deeper into the forests, relying on the knowledge of hidden trails, concealed shelters, and caches they had long maintained. These shadows of the Beothuk resist contact, avoiding both the Europeans and neighboring indigenous groups who might inadvertently expose them. Yet even this adaptive strategy comes at a cost. Communities become fragmented, communication breaks down, and the social cohesion that had defined their culture begins to fray. Stories passed down through oral histories hint at acts of courage and defiance during these dark years. Elders recount the careful transport of food across treacherous terrain, clandestine hunting parties, and daring escapes from encroaching settlers. Tools and canoes are hidden, red ochre markings guide movement through the forest, and signals are left in plain sight only for those who know how to interpret them. Every decision becomes a balance between survival, secrecy, and cultural continuity. By the late 18th century, the cumulative effects of disease, famine, and human interference create a tipping point. Camps that had been in continuous use for generations are abandoned. The population dwindles dramatically, and the rhythms of traditional life, the seasonal hunts, the storytelling circles, the spiritual ceremonies, are interrupted or lost entirely. Even as the Beothuk strive to maintain their way of life, the external pressures intensify, leaving communities vulnerable to further displacement, starvation, and eventual extinction. Yet, even in these years of crisis, evidence of ingenuity persists. Archaeological sites reveal careful storage techniques for dried fish and meat, the maintenance of hidden caches, and the preservation of ceremonial artifacts. Red ochre continues to mark tools and shelters, asserting identity and connection even in isolation. These remnants testify to a people who, despite being beset by forces beyond their control, refuse to surrender their culture quietly. As the chapter closes, the audience sees a population caught in a deadly convergence: ecological stress, introduced disease, resource scarcity, and the pressures of an expanding European presence. The Beothuk, once masters of survival in Newfoundland's forests and rivers, are now struggling to endure in a world that grows increasingly hostile. The shadows that moved so silently through the trees are thinning, and the resilience that had defined generations faces its greatest test. The winds along the Exploits River carry a haunting quiet. The forests and rivers that once echoed with the songs, footsteps, and laughter of the Beothuk are now nearly silent. Only a few traces remain: footprints in the sand, red ochre on stones, and the faint impression of abandoned shelters. Amid this fading world, a single voice rises, Shanadithit, the last known Beothuk, a young woman whose life would become the final testament to a vanished people. Shanadithit was born into a world already shrinking. Disease, famine, and the encroachment of Europeans had reduced her community to a few scattered families. By the early 19th century, much of Newfoundland was a patchwork of empty camps, overgrown trails, and silent rivers that once carried the canoes of her ancestors. Her family, like others, relied on secret knowledge passed down through generations. Hidden hunting grounds, concealed caches, and coated marks of red ochre guiding them through the forests and waterways. When European settlers finally captured Shanadithit in 1823, they could not have known the treasure they had taken. She carried with her centuries of accumulated knowledge, of survival, of the land, of social structure, and of spiritual life. Through her drawings and notes, she preserved the final fragments of Beothuk culture. Depictions of canoes, tools, dwellings, animals, and ceremonial life. Each sketch was more than art, it was instruction, memory, and a record of identity in the face of imminent extinction. Her drawings show the complex ingenuity of her people. Canoes are drawn with precise dimensions, indicating their importance for fishing and travel. Hunting scenes capture the rhythm of the land, caribou migrations, seal hunts, and the careful use of traps and spears. These illustrations reveal the Beothuk's intimate understanding of seasonal cycles, river currents, and coastal geography, knowledge accumulated over millennia and now concentrated in a single individual. Shanadithit also recorded the use of red ochre, sketching its application on bodies, tools, and hides. She depicted the patterns and symbols that conveyed clan identity, territorial markers, and hidden caches. For historians, these drawings are cryptic messages from the past, hinting at a coded communication system that outsiders could never fully decipher. Even today, some of her symbols resist interpretation, leaving modern scholars to speculate on their meaning and function. Her notes also provide insight into social life and spiritual practice. Ceremonies, storytelling, and seasonal gatherings are shown not as simple rituals but as integral components of cultural cohesion. In her sketches, flames from ceremonial fires illuminate small groups of figures, illustrating the interdependence of the community, the reverence for ancestors, and the rhythm of daily life. These glimpses suggest a society that was not merely surviving but living with purpose, meaning, and a deep connection to the land. As Shanadithit grew older, the weight of her people's extinction became apparent. She witnessed the final erosion of traditional territories, the loss of hunting grounds, and the disappearance of family and friends. Yet, even in captivity and illness, she became the repository of memory, a living archive. Through her interactions with European chroniclers, she conveyed stories of the Beothuk struggles, strategies, and resilience. Every drawing, every note, every recounted memory became a bridge connecting the present with a world on the verge of vanishing. Shanadithit's life was tragically short, she died in 1829 at the age of 29. But her legacy endures. Museums, archives, and historical studies preserve her drawings and writings, offering the only direct insight into Beothuk life from the perspective of a community member. For modern viewers and researchers, she embodies both the brilliance and fragility of her culture, a final voice that speaks across centuries. Through her, we understand that the Beothuk were not merely victims of disease and colonization but skilled navigators of their environment, ingenious artisans, and careful preservers of knowledge. Shanadithit's contributions allow the echoes of Beothuk life to persist, guiding historians and indigenous communities in reconstructing the lost ways of a people who shaped Newfoundland's forests, rivers, and coasts for generations. As the chapter draws to a close, the camera follows a river at dawn, the water glinting like liquid red ochre in the sunlight. The stillness is poignant, a reflection of absence and remembrance. Shanadithit's drawings, now scattered across pages and preserved behind glass, remain alive, whispering the rhythms of a vanished culture. Through her, the Beothuk speak once more, not in numbers or settlements, but in knowledge, memory, and enduring connection to the land that bore them. The dense forests of Newfoundland stretch endlessly, a labyrinth of birch, spruce, and pine, crisscrossed by rivers that shimmer under the morning sun. Here, in this rugged and often unforgiving landscape, the Beothuk once moved like shadows. For generations, they mastered the rhythms of the land, crafting a life built on stealth, intelligence, and deep ecological knowledge. As European settlement expanded, the Beothuk increasingly retreated, carving out hidden territories that would preserve their culture, even as the world around them encroached. Seasonal camps, long abandoned, lie scattered across the island, overgrown with moss and saplings. Their remnants are subtle but telling: fire pits ringed with stones, tools buried carefully for safekeeping, and patches of red ochre staining the soil. Each site tells a story of careful planning, resourcefulness, and intimate understanding of the environment. Archaeologists visiting these locations notice that the camps are never randomly placed. They follow the migration of caribou, the spawning of salmon, and the ebb and flow of tides. Every location reflects a careful strategy for survival, balancing access to food, concealment from outsiders, and respect for the rhythms of the natural world. Rivers were highways, guiding the Beothuk through territories both familiar and secret. Canoes, carved with precision, carried hunters swiftly through waterways, allowing them to travel long distances with minimal exposure. Along the banks, small caches of food and tools were hidden beneath rocks or inside hollow logs. These secret stashes ensured that even if a family had to move suddenly, they could survive the harsh winters and unpredictable summers. Each cache was marked subtly with red ochre, a code that only members of the tribe could interpret. The forests themselves became a map. Paths were worn into the soil over decades, connecting hunting grounds, fishing spots, and ceremonial sites. Some trails led to vantage points overlooking valleys, allowing the Beothuk to monitor wildlife and human activity. Others were deliberately deceptive, designed to confuse any intruders. This network of hidden routes reflects a sophisticated knowledge of the landscape, a knowledge that Europeans could never fully comprehend. Artifacts recovered from these sites reveal the depth of Beothuk ingenuity. Stone tools, carved wooden implements, and woven nets show a people who adapted technology to their environment. Every item was multifunctional, conserving resources in a world where scarcity was real. Red ochre appears repeatedly, on hides, tools, and even rocks near campfires, suggesting it was not merely decorative but a form of coded communication. Some archaeologists believe these markings indicated seasonal migration routes, clan territories, or the location of hidden supplies, a secret language written directly onto the land. The Beothuk's survival strategies were not only practical but also spiritual. Certain locations were chosen for ritual significance: caves, river bends, and hilltops that carried symbolic meaning. Offerings, small carvings, and ceremonial fires were left as markers of respect and memory. These sites reveal a culture that intertwined survival with spirituality, showing that even in the face of mounting pressures from disease, famine, and colonization, the Beothuk maintained a coherent and deeply meaningful way of life. Yet, even as they withdrew deeper into the forests, traces of their existence persisted in the landscape. Canoe tracks, red streaks of ochre, and abandoned tools provided clues to modern researchers about how the Beothuk navigated and survived. Each artifact is a fragment of a larger puzzle, a testament to a people who refused to vanish quietly. Their hidden territories were not just refuges, they were living archives of knowledge, encoded in stone, wood, and pigment, waiting for those who could read them. Shanadithit's accounts provide context for these secret movements. She described the careful avoidance of Europeans, the deliberate relocation of families, and the importance of secrecy for survival. Her drawings, when combined with archaeological evidence, suggest a population that remained resilient despite isolation and dwindling numbers. They were hunters, gatherers, and navigators, masters of concealment and preservation, whose knowledge of Newfoundland's landscape was unparalleled. As the chapter closes, the camera sweeps across misty rivers and forested valleys, lingering on the faint red streaks left by ochre. The landscape itself becomes a testament to the Beothuk's ingenuity, a living record of their survival strategies, cultural knowledge, and intimate connection to the land. Though the people themselves have vanished, the traces they left behind continue to speak. In rivers, forests, and hidden campsites, whispering the story of a civilization that lived carefully, wisely, and with profound respect for the natural world. The forests and rivers of Newfoundland seem timeless, but hidden within them are traces of a people long gone. The Beothuk, draped in red ochre, moved silently through this landscape for centuries, leaving behind marks that continue to whisper across generations. Though their numbers disappeared, their influence persisted, woven into the culture, language, and practices of neighboring indigenous groups, and etched into the land itself. Every place name, every obscure trail, and every scattered artifact offers a glimpse into a culture that refuses to be fully erased. The Beothuk left behind more than empty campsites and tools, they left knowledge encoded in survival strategies. Archaeologists studying abandoned villages notice patterns in how they stored food, organized camps, and rotated hunting grounds. This knowledge was not lost entirely. Some techniques were adopted by nearby Mi'kmaq and Inuit groups, particularly in methods of hunting, fishing, and canoe travel. Even small details, such as the design of certain traps or patterns for netting fish, reflect Beothuk ingenuity subtly integrated into regional practices. Place names across Newfoundland bear silent testimony to their presence. Names of rivers, bays, and lakes often retain echoes of the Beothuk language or reference features important to their communities. In some regions, oral histories passed down through other indigenous groups preserve memories of encounters with the Red people, their avoidance strategies, and their relationship to the land. Though much was lost to time and colonial disruption, these fragments provide a link to the Beothuk world, reminding us that cultural influence is not always visible in population numbers. Artifacts themselves are windows into persistence. Tools, ornaments, and the unmistakable streaks of red ochre found across sites tell stories that cannot be spoken in words alone. The ochre, applied to bodies, hides, and objects, served as identity markers, spiritual symbols, and possibly coded maps. Even centuries after their disappearance, these marks continue to challenge interpretation, sparking curiosity and reflection in historians and archaeologists. Each discovery is a reminder that the Beothuk's presence extends beyond their physical lives, it resonates in the ways the land was used, altered, and remembered. Neighboring indigenous groups, particularly the Mi'kmaq, show subtle traces of Beothuk influence in ritual practices, hunting techniques, and even settlement patterns. Shared knowledge about seasonal movements, safe travel routes, and sustainable resource use suggests that the Beothuk's legacy quietly persisted in regional culture. Even as European colonization reshaped the social and ecological landscape, these borrowed strategies helped communities survive in Newfoundland's challenging environment. Red ochre remains the most tangible symbol of this enduring presence. Scholars believe that the specific patterns used by the Beothuk encoded practical information, hidden caches, fishing spots, and clan boundaries, but they also carried cultural and spiritual significance. Today, when archaeologists find these streaks on rocks, tools, or hides, they are glimpsing the language of a people whose communication was inseparable from the land. In this way, the Beothuk speak still, though silently, guiding researchers to uncover the stories they could not record in words. Even in modern Newfoundland, evidence of the Beothuk's subtle influence persists. Some hunting practices, canoe designs, and ceremonial customs among neighboring groups trace back to strategies perfected by the Red people. These traces are quiet, almost invisible to the casual observer, but they reveal a continuity of knowledge and culture that survived despite extinction. The Beothuk did not vanish entirely, their wisdom and artistry lingered, passing like an undercurrent through generations. Archaeological and historical studies continue to reveal surprises. Sites long considered unremarkable now yield insights into seasonal movements, social networks, and ecological knowledge. The patterns of red ochre, previously dismissed as decorative, may have served as intricate maps, records, and symbols of clan affiliation. Each discovery deepens our understanding of how the Beothuk lived, moved, and interacted with their environment, emphasizing that cultural presence is not solely measured by numbers but by influence and memory. As the camera glides over the rugged coastline, misty rivers, and forested valleys, the faint echoes of the Beothuk world emerge. Each red streak, each abandoned camp, each place name carries stories that invite reflection. The audience is left with an awareness that even vanished peoples leave lasting imprints, in knowledge, culture, and landscape. The Beothuk are gone, but they remain, silently present in the rhythm of rivers, the flight of birds, and the soil beneath ancient trees. By the end of this chapter, viewers grasp a crucial truth: extinction does not erase influence. The Beothuk's culture, practices, and wisdom persist, subtly woven into the land, neighboring communities, and the archaeological record. They are a reminder that human presence is measured not only by survival but also by the depth of knowledge, resilience, and legacy left behind. In Newfoundland, the Red people remain, not in population, but in spirit, memory, and enduring trace. The forests of Newfoundland stretch endlessly beneath a pale, shifting sky. Rivers wind through the landscape like veins, and the wind carries whispers of a people whose lives once shaped every corner of this rugged land. The Beothuk, the Red people, are no longer here in body, yet their essence lingers in every stone, every stretch of riverbank, and every streak of red ochre that survives. The land remembers them, silently narrating a story of resilience, ingenuity, and mystery. Across rocky coasts and forested valleys lie the remains of seasonal camps. Tools carefully buried for safekeeping, canoes carved with skill, and hides marked with ochre offer glimpses of a civilization that was meticulous, adaptive, and deeply intelligent. Archaeologists studying these sites realize that the Beothuk had mastered survival in one of North America's most challenging environments. They understood the rhythm of rivers, the migration of caribou, the ebb and flow of the tides, and the complex ecosystems of forest and sea. Their survival was a delicate balance of knowledge, skill, and cultural practice, passed down through generations. Red ochre, more than a pigment, stands as the ultimate symbol of the Beothuk legacy. Applied to bodies, hides, tools, and even rocks, it marked identity, protection, and communication. Patterns in ochre may have encoded information about seasonal routes, clan territories, and hidden resources. Even now, these marks speak like a secret language carved into the landscape, waiting for those patient enough to decode it. In this way, the Beothuk left a riddle for future generations, knowledge and wisdom preserved in silence, hinting at depths we may never fully understand. The story of Shanadithit, the last known Beothuk, brings this legacy into sharper focus. Her drawings, notes, and recollections preserve the memory of a people, their tools, rituals, and landscapes. Through her, we see the Beothuk's deep understanding of hunting, fishing, and navigating rivers, as well as maintaining cohesion within small communities. Every sketch, every symbol, every word she left behind is a testament to a culture that balanced survival, artistic expression, and spiritual life, a culture whose memory challenges modern interpretation. Influence extends beyond their own people. Neighboring indigenous groups carry fragments of Beothuk knowledge, hunting techniques, canoe designs, and ceremonial practices hint at integration of Red people strategies into regional traditions. Place names echo their presence, rivers, bays, and forests hold the memory of the Red people. Though their communities disappeared, their cultural imprint threads quietly through Newfoundland, a subtle current beneath modern life. Yet mysteries remain. Some artifacts resist interpretation, and many patterns in red ochre remain undeciphered. Certain sites suggest deliberately hidden knowledge, perhaps an intentional retreat into secrecy. These enigmas create a haunting tension, a civilization lost to time, yet still speaking in whispers, shadows, and red streaks along the rivers. Each discovery reminds us that history is incomplete, that presence can endure in the absence of people. Even as roads cut through forests, settlements expand, and technology reshapes Newfoundland, traces of the Beothuk endure. Archaeologists uncover small treasures, beads, tools, fire pits, and ochre that refuses to fade. Each artifact brings renewed insight and wonder, connecting us to a people whose ingenuity and resilience continue to inspire. The final embers of Beothuk culture glow faintly across the landscape. Fires that once marked ceremonies, streaks of red that painted identity, and stories preserved in memory or sketches speak across centuries. The audience is left with a profound understanding: culture does not vanish entirely. It persists in influence, in legacy, and in subtle traces that invite reflection, study, and respect. As the camera sweeps over misty rivers, forested valleys, and red-streaked shores, the silence of the wilderness feels alive. It carries the essence of a people who walked these lands with skill, care, and meaning. The red people are gone, yet they endure, in memory, in material traces, and in the enigmatic language of red ochre. Their story is a testament to resilience, mystery, and the enduring power of cultural identity, leaving viewers with one final thought: even when a civilization seems lost, the land itself may still hold its secrets, waiting to be read.